encounter.
But no, actually,
It feels very
Hello and welcome to the Unwanted Opinion podcast, the show in which me and my friends give our unwanted opinion on all things film. My name is Lewis and I'm joined today with Kyle.
Hello.
Hello, and once again, no Gonthal. I mean, Kyle, I feel like we've spent most of this year being split up, you know?
Well, geographically we are.
Geographically,
that
of course.
we've always been split up.
But I feel like, this is going to be great drama for the listeners, because you get the first film where the band's all together, and then this is our Empire Strikes Back, where we're constantly split up, and then we're going to come back together for the best
I mean,
one,
you were here last week as well.
And I wasn't here last week, so I mean, we're always split up.
It's like a double bill of Empire Strikes Back. But anyway.
Yes. Today's episode, we are talking about entry-level horror films. So films that, if you're not a big horror fan, or if you're a child and you're for some reason listening to the show, or you have kids, you can show them this, and it won't be too scarring, I don't think. Things that are kind of appropriate, or, older films that I guess were regarded much scarier at the time, but now I guess would have had a lower rating, I suppose. So those are the kind of entry-level things we're going to look at today, and also got reviews for Gareth Edward's new sci-fi epic, The Creator, and Kyle has watched all of Ahsoka on Disney+, so he's going to give us a full rundown on the new Star Wars series. So, Kyle, let's start with The Creator. So,
let's get into
like I said, it was directed by Gareth Edwards and written by Gareth Edwards, as well as Chris Weitz, who also penned the script for Rogue One back in 2016, probably Gareth Edwards' most famous film. Of course, he did Godzilla in 2014, Monsters in 2011, and Rogue One, like I said, in 2016. And it stars John David Washington, Gemma Chan, Ken Watanabe, Alison Janney, and it's Madeleine Yuna Voilet's debut film, who plays the little AI girl in this. So, the career opens with all these new newsreels and adverts basically hailing AI as being a great asset to mankind. We're in the year 2055, so a fair bit in the future. It's showing how AI's helped our lives, how we've advanced because of it. But then the Western world's relationship with AI falls apart once a nuclear bomb goes off and detonates LA, and there's an apparent AI error. And because of it, AI is now outlawed from the Western world, which now creates an ideological divide between the States, the Western society, and what it's called in 2055 in the future, New Asia. Which is kind of vague of what New Asia actually is. We never really kind of find out what the meaning of that is. But now Taylor, who's played by John David Washington, is tasked with infiltrating New Asia and finding what is called Nirmada, which is the chief architect and this holy figure of the AI,
creator,
who they consider their god. So that's kind of the setup. I won't spoil anything more than that. And Kyle, what were your overall thoughts of The Creator?
Do you know what, I want to emphasise how you're talking about those first 5 minutes. I don't think I've had a film set up a world so effectively in a
efficiently as well.
And because obviously you can say this is a world where it's not just the future, it's an alternate history where robotic development happened very much in the 40s and 50s. It helped with the moon landing,
the space age sort of thing.
Yeah, so robots have been around for a while in this world, and I really liked this world that was created because there was little subtle hints of kind of things. There's one aspect that you really loved, which is somebody can sell their likeness to the AI.
Yes, too.
So that
I thought very, very current, very topical. Something I kind of wish was kind of explored more, but I did enjoy that little world piece of world building they had.
Yeah, a wee piece of world building. I think I really like this film. We have kind of different
similar
opinions.
issues. We'll get
similar issues on it. I can't emphasize how beautiful this film is. From what it was shot on to the budget of the film to the kind of presence that Gareth Edward he can make with kind of the spaceship, how it's just kind of looming there, and it's just
Nomad is this big $1 trillion spaceship that the US has created to hunt down AI, and it's very impressive. The scale of it is really amazing, and
there's a really cool lighting effect.
It's something the US government would do is they'd invest $1 trillion into a massive super weapon thing, kind of Death Star-y, like the way
it was a
bit
Death Star, wasn't it? But I'm trying to think of spoileries, but I thought that my favourite I love Alison Janney. She's my
I do love Alison Janney as
she's my
well.
favorite US politician from the West Wing. I just love anything she's in, and
Uh-huh.
you know, when looking back in that film, I actually
Mhm.
am so captivated by that character, and actually the
Mhm.
evilness behind
Mhm.
that character, which we'll go on maybe when we talk a wee bit about spoilers.
Yeah. If we go to spoilers for sure,
Oh, if
Alison
we,
Janney's
sorry, yeah.
yeah, sorry, no, no. I mean, kind of want to. I mean, we're free reign here. Alison Janney's a character I really wanted more of. Kyle, I said this
Yeah,
to you when I came
hundred
out the film.
percent.
I thought she kind of plays the adversary kind of role, the antagonist. I say kind of antagonist because her motivations make complete sense, and I feel like because this kind of ties into some of the flaws of the film. I feel like she was one of the more complete characters, even though she didn't have as much screen time as other people.
She
And I
she
guess a lot of it
was
comes down to
complete.
her
Her
performance. Uh huh.
her purpose and her
Mm-hmm.
drive was very clear, and
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
it never diverted throughout the
Yeah.
story. You know, she always
Because
had
I
what she
uh
had
huh.
in her head.
Uh-huh. And I liked her setup is great. Like you were saying about the opening, it's efficient and it just boom, cuts to the emotion, perfect, and then you understand her savagery
Yeah.
later on and what she's
Oh
doing to
yeah.
these AI people. You understand it. And you're like, okay, I get it. But I guess like okay, Kat, I agree with pretty much everything you've said. Uh, it's visually astounding. It was made for like $80 million, a $4,000 camera. Sony can't remember the exact specific model.
Sony something something something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is amazing what Gareth Edwards can do on a low budget. I mean, this goes back to his days when he made monsters for like nothing back in 2011 because he's worked in visual effects for years and then went on to do direction. And Gareth Edwards has always made visually impressive films, especially with visual effects. Scale is his biggest like skill. He manages to make things look colossal. He gets everything, all the perspectives right. I always think he's always Rogue One. I have flaws with as well, but the scale, the sort of
Yeah.
tangibility of all the visual effects, the world, it feels very real and raw, and that's exactly the same for the creator here. This feels like a lived-in world. All the world building stuff is cool. There's certain places I wish we could have spent more time in just to understand, like the city stuff. We never really spend much time in like the city in New Asia. I mean, I guess maybe didn't want to be
It's the
too
kind of
Blade
it's the
Runnery. Uh huh.
planting of it because
Mhm.
we see adverts for like go and live on the moon colony, and
Yes, yes, yes. All that stuff.
we never see it.
Mhm.
somewhere you never go to the moon,
Yeah.
but I'm like that's a cool aspect to know that that's happening.
Mhm.
But we
Yeah.
don't need to see like
We don't need to
a
see it. Yeah.
fledged moon
Mhm.
hotel sort of thing.
And look, all the character designs, all the models, all the robots, all fantastic. The weapons, it just all of it great, fantastic. But for me, the biggest glaring issue, and it's been an issue with all of Gareth Edwards' films now, is that it's the script and the characters I just didn't care about. John David Washington's Taylor is like he's just so bland, and the whole film is really the main thing you want to get attached to here is the relationship between him and Alfie, the AI girl, and I just didn't care for the relationship at all. I wasn't emotionally invested in it, and there's also another thing on top of it, which I won't spoil right now, is Taylor's obviously going after something that he's longing
Yes,
for, and
yes.
I was like, are we spending all our time doing this on a character who we never really, cared about or grew attached to? And like, I like John David Washington as an actor. I do. I really like even in Tenet, in a film where he's literally doesn't have a character name. He brings a lot of charisma to that
The
role. I
protagonist.
feel like here he doesn't have it though, and I do think this is a
Yeah.
problem with Gareth Edwards' direction because now a commonality in so many films, like Felicity Jones in Rogue One, isn't really anything exciting, and same with Aaron Taylor Johnson in Godzilla. All three of these main characters now are all really bland. And I just think there's an issue there with the direction and the actors. He's not getting the most out of his actors here. And all three of them are good actors. So I don't know.
It's true. Can't
It
wait to
was a
see
bit bland
Craven.
for me, Taylor. Uh huh.
See,
Craven, yeah.
this is where I
Mhm,
minorly kind of diverge from you in
mhm.
that sense. I can't go into too much details why I
Okay.
diverge because it's
Mhm,
spoiler territory. But for
mhm,
me, I viewed the film differently than the kind of bond between
mhm.
Alfie and Taylor.
Taylor,
I
yeah.
was, had Aaron Taylor Johnson in my head. I was about to call him Aaron. I was like, oh no, wait. I had a
Yeah.
kind of different kind of approach to it, which I think is just how I viewed the film earlier on. they kind of change.
Right.
And I would love to kind of get into more. Maybe we could discuss it like in the future when we talk about like
Mhm.
top
Mhm.
sci-fi films of the year or something.
Yeah.
Give it more time to sizzle. Um, and yeah, this is where I kind of diverged, and I was like, maybe I can have seen this a bit differently. But I
Mhm.
do get what you're meaning, and
Mhm.
I do agree in some senses, but for reasons why I can't say right now, just to avoid
Okay. Yeah.
spoilers for
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
film,
Yeah.
which is really
Uh-huh.
annoying. But I think it's be a great conversation to branch into one day of just how maybe,
No, for sure. Yeah.
everybody can see a film differently.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
no, I do agree with your past comments
Mhm.
about like Rogue One, especially. Um,
Mhm.
Godzilla was the main character for me, and the way he got that lizard to portray emotion on that film,
No,
it
I
was
mean, look, I
beautiful.
mean, it's been memed to death how like Bryan Cranston was the most interesting character in that film. They off him in 15 minutes. And
That
it's
was a
just like great.
paycheck. That was such a
Yeah,
pay.
yeah, that
And
was a
I
paycheck.
think that was the
Mhm.
earliest time I ever kind of actually appreciated
Uh-huh.
that sometimes films just get a big name in for 10 minutes
Yeah,
to sell
yeah.
it. And I think that was the
Uh,
first time I actually
mhm.
appreciated it. It
It
was
was
like
like his first film after Breaking Bad, and was like on the Cranston hype, and then he's just gone in 15 minutes. Spoilers, I guess, for Godzilla
I
2014.
never saw
Yeah.
Breaking Bad, and then I went to see
Oh yeah.
Godzilla in the IMAX for my 16th, and he
Mhm.
died off, and then I was like, he was
All
alright.
right.
I was like, who is
Everyone
he?
else in the audience sad.
I've seen him in
Right, so
Malcolm in the
Kyle,
Middle.
what are you giving the creator? What score?
So, yeah, I haven't verged too
Mm-hmm.
much from when I saw it, and I did say for
Mm-hmm.
you, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. I
Eight,
do
ten.
think this is a
Okay.
film we should come back to later on.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a few weeks, let it
Mm-hmm.
make not much money at the box office, and
No,
then
sadly not. We'll get into
we
that.
can
Yeah.
discuss it. But what about you?
Well, Kyle, this is the problem, right? I'm lower than you. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's
Yeah,
fine, story wise, character wise. But the problem is now we're in a place in the cinematic landscape where films like this simply don't get made. And I really, really want people to go see it so it makes money and we can get more
yeah,
original
because this
sci-fi
is what
films,
we
even though
want.
this is a film I'm not head over heels about. But that's kind of now the problem we're in. Unless I absolutely hated it, I'd be like, guys, don't go see it. But I think there is stuff in here that a lot of people will get enjoyment from. It's visually very interesting. The world's very interesting. But for me, it's that story and character, and obviously those issues are bigger for some than others. So
Yeah.
yeah, so, Kyle, let's now jump
A
to Ahsoka because you've
galaxy
watched all.
far, far away.
You're our Star Wars correspondent on the show, so
Get ready to sack
please
your Star Wars
take.
correspondent.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, take it
Uh,
away.
okay, so Ahsoka series created and written by Dave Filoni, who
Mhm,
is best known in the Star Wars universe for working on the Clone Wars,
mhm,
working as the showrunner.
mhm,
He also was behind the creation of the character of Ahsoka, who, if
yeah.
nobody knows, was Anakin Skywalker's apprentice during the Clone Wars. Went off to the wee bit, had a good time. So the plot
Did she?
serves as a sequel to Star Wars Rebels, another animated show that Filoni worked on, and
Mhm,
is working as a prequel to this Disney Plus universe that's going up for Heir of the Empire, right? Which is this film that
yes.
they announced a few months back. Um,
Mhm,
so the series stars Rosaria Dawson as Ahsoka,
mhm,
reprising the
mhm,
role from Mandalorian and Book of Boba
of
Fett,
course.
two
Yeah.
shows that shouldn't have had Ahsoka in it. Alongside her is her old apprentice Sabine, played by Natasha Liu, and character from Rebels,
Mhm,
as well as Hera, Mary Elizabeth Weinstein, from her Rebel days. So basically, they're seeking to stop the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn, played
mhm.
by Lars Mikkelsen, who's the only one who actually voiced the character in Rebels to come into live
Right, so he's
action.
come. I thought David Tennant was like
He was the
also
Clone Wars. He actually never did Rebels.
right.
Sorry.
Okay, he never
So
did
Dave
Rebels.
Tennant
Okay,
plays Ahsoka's robot that was from the Jedi
okay,
Temple, um,
okay.
and they hope to unite their and Oswald stop fraud and reunite with their long lost friend Ezra, played by a man
Yes.
Isfandi. This is a plot point from the end of Rebels. It's a shame you kind of have to see that to know, but
Right. Yeah.
they
This is
also
this is
have to.
part of the reason.
This is
Sorry,
a
I'm
bit of
so
the
go
issue.
because
Yeah.
I'm a casual Star Wars guy. I've seen the movies and I've watched like uh, Andor and Mandalorian. I didn't watch this show because all I heard was I need to now watch
It's
so
like
many
4 seasons.
Rebels
There's
and
like
Clone
60
Wars
episodes.
and
Yeah.
yeah, all that. So
But during this whole endeavor, they're confronted by dark Jedi's Bale and Skull, played by the late
mhm,
Ray Stevenson, Annie's apprentice Shin, played by Ivana Sakaro. So I'm going to go through some of my issues with this.
Okay.
One is the pacing. Once again,
Right.
this is 8 episodes. It shouldn't have been 8 episodes.
How
It
many
should have
should it
been
be?
either it should have been 6 fully fleshed out episodes or a 2-hour movie,
Oh
right?
God, right. Trevor,
You,
right then.
you're the no, but seriously, you're having this issue where I do think you're also taking a budget that you're pushing out for quite a lot. Where I'm thinking if you're actually focusing on certain set pieces, you could probably get better quality of fights. The CGI in some of the scenes is quite good. Some of the scenes you're like, well, that's a volume, which is more and more that we're seeing these days.
Yeah, yeah.
My biggest issue with this, right, which is what I kind of had a fear about when Dave Filoni got his first full live action show, is it is fan service so much, right?
Okay.
Specifically, there are scenes where, and now this is gonna be spoilers, by the way, because I kind of have to push it.
No, no,
It's
go
also
ahead. I'm
Star
not gonna
Wars.
watch
Nobody
it.
gives a shit. They're the World Between Worlds, right? Which I don't know if you know about. It's a whole thing. Ahsoka goes into it, and basically, who's there? Hayden Christensen, Anakin
Of course,
Skywalker.
yes, I've seen the
Now,
stuff
this
from it.
is a Ghost Force version. So this is post Redemption Vader Anakin,
Yeah.
which I do think is the most interesting side of this character that we've met, who is a redeemed Anakin, but still has a bit of a temper. Yeah, he still kind of holds on to that dark side, and they do flashbacks, and we go into the Clone Wars. And you're like, well, that's Dave Filoni just doing what he wanted to do, isn't it?
Well, right, okay, because obviously fans of the character of Ahsoka have watched
Yeah,
everything she's in, right?
yeah.
Are the flashbacks necessary for this story, or
No,
are, like you said,
no,
no, they
no.
don't help the story
It
at all?
the
Right.
I say the conversations that they're having helps the story, but the flashbacks are setting and purely like look at we're on
Oh, look,
Geonosis.
Hayden Christensen's back.
Yeah, I know, I know. I
Look
have
at
to say
Ahsoka
that
in live
the
action in this time
conversation
period.
between Hayden
Oh.
Christian and Rashad Ahsoka are important to the story. It does help Ahsoka's character. It's the settings. You could have had him just stay in this world between worlds and chatted for 20 minutes, and it would still work. It's the thing that he's like, look, he's in his Clone Wars armor now. Like he's not just in his like robes.
Right.
Oh, smashing. And yeah, that's what I kind of struggle with. But the pros I have of this show, right? Lars Mikkelsen, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. That Lewis, I love Thrawn with a passion.
Oh, I know.
With a passion, I really wish he was like, and Lars really does get it across that he is genuinely quite threatening and intimidating. He is the smartest character in the Star Wars universe, right? Because there's a point where he learns Ahsoka was trained by Anakin Skywalker, and he just goes, "Yep, we can't deal with her." And they go, "What?" He's
Oh,
like,
really? You just
He's
knew?
like,
Yeah.
I knew her master, and if I knew him, like we could
Yeah.
not deal with her. And I'm like, mate, fuck, you're smart. Like this is why I actually think he's a good villain, and I'm on set, and I'm like, right, what's the point in this whole heir to the empire? Because we get Snoke and we get Palpatine back. It's shocking. I do have to give a highlight to Ray Stevenson's portrayal of Balin Skull, who is this dark Jedi who he's not a Sith, he's not a grey Jedi, he's this dark Jedi. He's this Jedi that after the fall of the Republic went on the kind of self-discovery. Okay? And there's a great scene where he's talking to his apprentice and she asks him why does he hate the Jedi? And he goes, I don't he went, I love the idea of the Jedi. He's like, I fell in love with the idea of the Jedi. It's what became of the Jedi that I hated. The kind of
It's
corruption.
funny. It's funny now. Disney seems comfortable to explore those ideas, but after the Last Jedi, they went nah nah nah. Let's not. Let's just patch
It's
that. But
so
now they are,
bizarre.
of course.
And it's the idea that he misses it and he's looking for something bigger, which culminates in this finale, right? Where we have a lot of things going on. Thrawn returns to our galaxy because he was in another galaxy. Ezra's kind of returned back. Ahsoka and Sabine are stuck in this other galaxy. So, like, what's going to happen with this? And Balin Skull goes on this journey, and he comes across these kind of three pillars. Now, this is a kind of gets into where it gets really into the kind of mythos of Star Wars, where you have like the gods of the Force,
Yeah.
and he's standing on it and he's looking off to a beacon, and I'm like, he is looking for what he thinks the Force is, and that's a real shame because he is genuinely the only character I want to see continued, and I don't want them to do it without Ray Stevenson because I don't think anybody really could capture that character as well as he
Mm.
could, which is a
Right.
real shame. But I don't understand what they're gonna do with the story.
Mm.
Are they
Well, is
gonna
it
do
is
another
it, like you
series before
said?
Heir of the
Is
Empire?
it? It's all just a crossover, though, isn't it? Like it's
This is
just
the thing. Yeah,
it's all just a
this
Marvel-esque building up to a big crossover
you
with
know.
Mandalorian and
Yeah,
whatever else. Now,
this show though should have been
uh,
a Rebels sequel instead of just an Ahsoka because they
mhm,
gave a lot of time for the other characters. I'm like,
right,
you you would have probably got a lot more traction if you did a Rebels sequel.
mm,
But right, so just to kind of get my final kind of thoughts out.
mm.
I have to give it a point for not including the Mandalorian because
He
it's
doesn't
hard for a
show up,
series.
of
It doesn't
course.
show up. That's actually a pro in my
Uh-huh.
head. But for a sense that this isn't a Phase One Marvel where they fell into it. They have
Mhm.
it planned out.
Yeah,
Yet it doesn't seem like they have a plan.
of course,
Like
classic
Filoni
Star
has
Wars.
this air
Hmm.
of the
Hmm.
Empire. But I'm
Yeah.
like, right, are we getting a second season? How's
Hmm.
this gonna tie into other what's happening here? What are we doing with these
Right.
characters? I'm intrigued by some, I'm not intrigued by most.
So
Also, just one thing. Thinking Mary Elizabeth Olsen should not have been cast as Hera. She's only in this because her fucking husband is Obi-Wan Kenobi. That is genuine.
Mary
Hot
Elizabeth Winstead,
take.
you mean? Yeah.
Weinstein, yeah, not Olsen, sorry. Mary Elizabeth
Sorry.
Olsen, I love. Elizabeth Weinstein, she is just. She doesn't do any. You should see some of her scenes, by the way. Shocking. Shocking.
Right, so she got
Uh,
in through nepotism sort of thing. I
oh,
got you.
yeah.
Right, so
Bloody
one
hell,
last
yeah.
question before you give your score. So, when the finale was all said and done, do you feel satisfied? Do you feel you like? Well, I guess you're saying you don't really know where this is going anymore.
Yeah.
The finale didn't clear anything up.
I feel satisfied knowing that fraud will play a part in the future. I
Okay.
love Thrawn. I wanted more Thrawn. I was really worried they were going to kill Thrawn because I was like, that's
Hmm.
something that they could do and be like, the heir of the Empire is actually the clone of Palpatine. Some
Yeah,
shit like
yeah,
that. So I
yeah,
am
yeah.
excited to see Thrawn, but I am really worried because I've seen Twitter and everybody wants Heir of the
Right.
Empire to be CGI looking Leia fighting Thrawn, which I am genuinely concerned will be the
No, they
case.
won't do that. They won't
Oh,
do. If they're building
C3PO
up
shows up in
Ahsoka,
this. That's a
uh,
cameo.
who C-3PO? Oh,
C3PO.
yeah.
I think they got backlash for having a CGI Leia because he's
Yeah.
basically like repeating what Leia would say. But listen, I don't give a shit about it. It's a really mediocre 5 out of 10.
Okay.
It's a very average show, and if you're looking for something better, just rewatch Andor. Please, just rewatch Andor. That's all I have to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
It's such a
Well, at least we're getting a
it's
second season of that, so
Thank God. Acolyte I'm interested in because it's so
yeah,
far
me
away
too.
from everything. That's the
Mhm,
only reason I'm interested for that show.
mhm.
But yeah, Ahsoka.
Well,
Mid.
there we go. Thank you, Kyle, for that review for Ahsoka. He said you should see him on this camera. He's just laid back. He's like, "Ah, job
Fucking
done." Like, oh,
yeah.
I'm fed up with Star Wars.
I can't wait for Mandalorian season 4.
Yeah,
Yay.
yeah, me neither. Yeah. Oh. So, what the average score I think for Star Wars this year for you is a 4 out of 10. Actually, less maybe. I can't remember what you gave
Well,
Mandalorian season
there's been
three.
2 projects I've seen, which is The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. Is that the only
And
been
yeah,
two
you
projects
hated.
this year?
Yeah, you hated Mandalorian as well.
Oh, no, Mandalorian was a piece of garbage. That's what that show was.
Yeah,
Fucking
it was a
hell.
waste of time to be fair. Right, so
Yeah.
let's move on to these entry level horror films. So,
Yeah,
like we were
spooky
saying,
season.
spooky season has started. We're in Halloween. It's going to be quite a dysfunctional Halloween because we do have a Scorsese thing to do. But regardless, this is all about films like I was saying. Kyle, I know plenty. I'm a big horror fan. I know you are too. But I know
I'm
plenty of
getting
people
back
who
into it. Yeah.
you get. Yeah, I know plenty of people who just aren't into anything spooky, anything scary, and for some of it, I understand. You know, if you're getting something really extreme and violent, you know, like Talk to Me this year, for example, that was a really, really intense horror film. You know, like the original Exorcist, just off the top of my head, Ritual, all these sorts of really intense horror films. I completely understand why they make people uncomfortable and they don't want to experience that gore and that fear. But we're trying to get people into it. It's spooky season. You gotta get into it. So we're doing these entry level horror films that are just maybe some are just a bit creepy, some are even a bit funny, or just kind of tackle the tropes and things that you can just kind of ease into the horror genre and slowly level up, as I like to say. So my first pick, Kyle, I'm going to start here. I'm going old school because I think a lot of films in the mid 20th century, even like the 70s, but I'm going like way back to the 40s here, have really creepy films, like the old school style, like Hammer films, or
Mm-hmm.
just the way films were produced back then. They had a bit more edge to them, I think, a bit more creepiness to them. And I'm going Black Narcissus, Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger's 1947 film, Black Narcissus. Narcissus. Oh my god, I can't pronounce it. Which actually got remade into a BBC show just last year, which I have not
Oh,
seen
really?
because I love this film and I don't want it ruined. So, so Black Narcissus follows Sister Clodagh, who's played by Deborah Kerr, as she leads a convent of nuns in the Himalayan mountains to establish a school and a hospital there, as instructed by a general. When they arrive, they meet this character called Mr. Dean, who's played by David Farrar, who believes the environment and the isolation will eventually get to the convent, and believe they won't last very long until the monsoon season, which is soon approaching. So that's kind of the setup. You've already got this convent of nuns who are going off away to this isolated area in the mountains, right? And before we get into any of the horror stuff, Kyle, I want to say we have to discuss the art direction and the production design. The art direction by Alfred Judge, I should say, and he does the matte paintings along with Percy Dewey. And these backdrops, Kyle, look, you were literally just talking about the volume a minute ago, right? These painted backdrops, like this whole film was set in the Himalayas, right? But it was all filmed in Pinewood Studios in the UK, right? My God, these are better than like 99% of green screen or like the
Yeah.
volume you've ever seen. Like they have such depth to them, and they also are just so vibrant and colourful, and yet they're realistic, right? And they sort of bring this Himalayan setting to life, right? And they bring these huge like depths. Like there's a character who like goes and rings this bell, and there's a shot like overhead shot, and you're like, oh my god, that mountain goes straight down. It seems like it goes on forever. And these are it's just a painting. It's just a painting. It's just the
I'm actually looking
incredible
at some on
trickery. Yeah,
IMDb. It's actually really impressive.
it's really impressive. It's like the trickery with the camera and the paintings. When you see it in motion, you're like, wow, that looks unbelievable. And while I said they provide like realism to it, it really transports you to the setting. There's like a dreamy quality to them. There's this otherworldly nature to it, and that's why we feel like we're in another world. And obviously at the time, you know, Britain was obviously this is just post-war. People obviously had adventure. Just everyday your average Joe hasn't the ability to adventure out to India or see the Himalayas and whatnot. So this is like really transportive for the time. But now we get to the creepier elements, right? Which mainly comes from Sister Ruth and this whole film, right? Although it's rated PG, it's got like this erotic edge to it where obviously nuns are obviously very celibate people, but because they are now put in such isolation, and then there's this attractive male character in it, you then see like lust and eroticism like eventually sort of take control in their head, but like nothing
Yeah.
too extreme. I mean, this is a PG rated. You can let your kids watch it. Trust me. This is for
Like,
the adults
it
to have a
makes
look at.
sense
They
that
can
you watch
understand.
it with the
Uh huh.
erotic part.
Oh,
Yeah.
I knew that was coming. I'm
Yeah.
glad Gonzalo's not here to make fun of me for that. But like, children aren't gonna get that sort of that subtle edge to it. But yeah, so this mainly comes from Ruth's obsession with Mr. Dean, which she already from the beginning you could tell well, isn't
Right.
all there, and as each scene goes on, like you can see this descent into madness, and this obsession becomes madness, and every scene, like I don't know if you've seen any images there on IMDb, but if you look up, Kathleen Bryan plays her, and all of this intensity and creepiness comes from her eyes and the way she's always lit and just like the close-ups, and it's always kind of low angle, and just the eyes are so intimidating, and the yes, he's got it there. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's got it.
Yeah. It's
Creepy with
really
this
quite
lip.
good.
Oh, the
Yeah.
lips. She goes crazy with this lipstick. Oh, and then eventually, like you see her like truly descend into someone really creepy. And yeah, like that is where it all kind of comes from, is her performance, and it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, you then get to like the finale, I should say, where it really does become this whole hunt. Ruth is hunting down the other sisters, and like she's been truly driven mad. You're like, oh my! When I saw this for the first time, I was like 21, and I was like, this is creeping me out. I was like, this is a creepy film. This whole finale is really unsettling, and it's just a brilliant watch. I mean, like I said, those are just all those creepy and horror elements come from Ruth. But also, there's another natural story. There's a love story blossoming here. Between this prince and who's someone played by Julie. Can't remember. There's a whole like love story blossoming here. Obviously, Mr. Dean and Sister Cloda, I should say. They have a little romance thing going on. They're trying to build this community up, and it's also, I guess, in the modern sense, people might look at this as sort of like, maybe it's a bit imperialist and colonialist. Actually, an aspect we didn't talk about with the creator, I should say, that kind of has that colonialist, imperial America going into different states, or like the Vietnam War. But this does it. It's not like oh, Britain is so great, England is so great. It's very very human. It's very very. It's just people trying to help people, and I really
Yeah.
like that. It's not too much. Now I should preface this. This is 1947. There is a character with blackface, so there is that problem. Obviously, you have to take it for what it was at the time. But it's also one I don't really understand, because they have another character who is a famous Indian actor who played Mowgli in like the 1942 Jungle Book.
Okay.
An Indian-born actor, but for some reason the romance character they decided to do blackface. I didn't really understand why they went out their way to cast an Indian actor just to have his co-star be a white woman in blackface. I don't know the logistical issues of that. I don't know what was going on in 1947. But look, it's of its time. I've given you that be warned aspect of it, but everything else, it's a fabulously directed film. It's two of the best directors ever. Please go see Black Narcissus, and you might get a bit creeped out as well. But hey, that's the point of this thing. Hey? There's my
It's a
pitch.
very
That's like
good.
a pitch
I,
to
I like
sell you
that.
that
Also,
film.
I might actually watch it now. You've
I've got the DVD.
convinced
I've
me.
got the DVD.
Uh,
What's your film,
do
Ken?
you
What's your
actually?
fit? Well, yeah, I've got the DVD. I actually kind of want to rebuy it on Blu-ray because the DVD is a bit like low quality.
Oh,
But,
DVD, not like
yeah,
Blu-ray.
DVD,
Oh
DVD.
yeah,
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
too
yeah.
we're
Old
too
school.
smug for just DVDs,
I know we're too
man.
good. We're too good for that trash.
um,
Yeah.
right, I'm gonna throw out
Mhm.
some what's runners up or
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Fair. Fair.
recommendations.
Mhm.
Zombieland.
Zombieland. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Funny film. I'm kind of looking more funny horrors to kind of
Mhm.
get into the
Mhm.
mood. Um, and then I completely forgot what the other choice was, so I'm just gonna jump right into my first choice. I just completely forgot, just blanked.
Oh.
My first choice is gonna be Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Right.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
have talked about this film a couple occasions, possibly on this
I think
podcast,
only once
and
before. I think about a year before.
I
Yeah.
think I've talked about it on Movie Talks as well, because
Oh.
I think that's when I kind of discovered it. So Tucker Dale vs. Evil basically stars Tyler Lieben as Dale and Alan Tudyk as
Mhm.
Tucker, and basically these guys play hillbillies. And the
Yes.
film starts as kind of traditional, follows a group of tweens going up to a cabin in the woods, and they stop and they're at this gas station. And there's these two hillbillies, and they're all looking at them and all like, "Oh, these guys are the creepiest things in the world. What the hell?" And then like as they drive off, the focus shifts to these hillbillies, and it's like they're just the two sweetest guys in the world. They're like, "We've just bought a wee cabin in the woods,
Yeah. They're so
you
excited.
know." We're just like, it's our vacation home. We're gonna get spruced up, and basically what happens follows a series of events that paints them in terrible light. That
Mhm.
the kids assume that a traditional classic horror film is occurring,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's a great introduction into what is kind of a very staple horror film where
Mhm.
you got a group
Mhm.
of kids going to like an isolated location, your
Mhm.
Friday the 13th, your Screams, all that kind of
Mhm.
classic
Yeah.
slashers. But what we get is this kind of wee
Mhm.
funny twist on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it is a great little entry because it
Mhm.
has some it prepares you for violent kills if you
Mhm.
continue to watch horror. This
Yeah.
kind of subsection of genre more than kind of like psychological scariness.
Yes. Yes.
as well as kind of just giving you a fun time with it. There are some kind of scenes that are made to be spooky. They're not, but that's what
Yeah,
you get with
yeah,
this film.
yeah.
It's
Because
not trying to be scary in that
the scenes
sense.
that are trying, when it's from the teens' perspective, where they see the hillbillies and other characters, where it seems like, oh, it's like
It's like
it's
dark
it's
lighting.
so over the top though that it's not scary anymore. You could understand the cliches. So if you watch horror films, oh, I kind of get the point of it now,
Yeah, it's
Mm.
and there are some deaths in it which are very funny,
Very funny,
and
very funny.
it's some of the times where one of the kids will maybe end up dying, and then Tucker
Mm.
Dale will go and try and help them. And then
Yeah,
as it switches to the kid's perspective, it looks like they're like chucking them into a
and
woodpecker or
woodchipper,
something,
yeah, yeah,
wood
yeah, yeah,
chipper, and they're trying to get them out of it. And it's a fun
yeah.
time, and I would honestly recommend it for anybody that kind of wants, oh, let's get a kind of horror film, but if they want a wee bit of edge off as well,
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
would definitely say it's a horror comedy rather than a
Yeah.
entry level horror compared to my
Mm-hmm.
second choice. But I love this film, Tucker and Dale
No,
vs
yeah,
Evil.
for
It's
sure.
so funny, and it's a great film that it makes you feel like you're watching a horror film, but you're actually watching a comedy, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice little mix.
I feel like it's actually kind of a underrated
Dark.
film. I don't really see
Oh
many
my
people really
god,
talking about
yeah.
it or mentioning it. It's quite strange because when I saw it for the first time, did I see it with you for the first time? I think we watched it.
I think I
Yeah,
made you watch
I've
it.
seen it twice. I remember watching it, and then it was on TV once in my house, and my parents watched it, and I was sat there and watched it again. I'm like, this is hilarious. I don't know. I just don't really feel like there's a lot of discussion about it. Obviously, Cabin in the Woods and that whole sort of comedic
We
deconstruction.
discussed that,
We
yeah.
discussed that. That deconstruction of the genre, I guess. I guess maybe because that was just flashier and it was Joss Whedon was behind it at the height of his popularity. That kind of got more traction. But I feel like this, I don't know, this stuck with me more than something like Cabin in the Woods. And I don't know, maybe because it's a bit later than Cabin in the Woods, but I just thought it was funnier as well. I just really like the two main characters, and when it cuts to the other perspectives, it's so funny.
It's
I
so
just,
funny.
I do think, and like you say, even though it's a horror comedy, and of course there's a lot of gore in it and violence, it is very entry level, and it's one that it brings attention to the cliches of the genre. And if you're new to horror, you could watch it and be like, oh, what are these? Or oh, you
Yeah.
slowly pick up on these things, and then you can always refer back to this as almost an encyclopedia of some of the staples you'll see. No, I think that's absolutely. I think it's a great choice. For my second pick, well, I guess honorable mentions. What did I have in my head? Because I'm going retro with this one more so than you. Um, I think Night of the Hunter. I think that's a great little thriller. Little thriller, it's a classic thriller about this guy's pretending to be a priest in order to go in and not priest, minister, I guess, because they can marry people. This minister who's a criminal and he gets out of prison and then he tries to marry this widow in order to get her money. Quite sinister film, but it's great. It's only like a 12 rated film now. I think back in the day it was rated 15 or something. I think Hitchcock's works are
Yes,
a
that's
lot
a
of his
great
things are
show.
fantastic. I mean, even though they're still rated 18, they obviously not on today's standards in terms of violence or anything. Things like Psycho, of course, Rear Window is a fantastic thriller. Psycho especially, right, is it's a very, very creepy film. But if you release that, and obviously that film wouldn't get released today, but if it got taken out of time and plonked out today, it wouldn't be rated 18. I don't think there's barely any blood in it or anything. But a lot of that comes from the suspense and the creepiness and that performance, by the Norman Bates character. Uh, Alfred Brooks, I think, plays him. I think I'm correct in saying that. Anyway, great film. Psycho's obviously a classic. It has, to be fair, one of the most iconic jump scares for me ever, which is really, really always makes me jump out my skin when it happens. So I would always recommend Psycho. I think if you're young, you could. I mean, I'm not a parent, all right, but I would show my 12-year-old Psycho. I don't think it would scar them that badly.
Let's not do that because
Let's maybe okay, maybe not.
I was showing Clockwork Orange at 12.
Oh, well, that's way more extreme than
Yeah,
Psycho.
I know, man.
Jesus. Yeah, yeah, yeah. True, I was
You're
shown
doing it dirty
Alien.
there, man.
I was shown Alien when I was 6 or 7, so that did actually really terrify me. Anyway, so don't show your kids Alien. That's a bad one. But I'm gonna go classic I talked about it on the show before, but I have to do it. I think it is probably the best entry level horror film for like any like 10-year-old or someone like approaching like teen years. Is Jaws. Jaws is a fantastic piece of suspense filmmaking, and like I said, back when it came out, I think this was an R-rated film. This was a full-on horror
It would have
film.
been X at the time.
I think X,
yeah.
X even, yeah. But now it's like rated PG or 12. Like you can show your kids Jaws, as long as you're there, of course. But
Parental guidance.
yeah, I mean, look, because Jaws works because look, it's not anything like ghosts. It's not a serial killer. It's not anything really supernatural or demonic. It's a shark. It's a shark, and also you don't really see the shark. It's all just built up through camera work and suspenseful music by John Williams, and just things in the distance, things like happening away. Although and just like you sort of see parts of the shark and bits and pieces of it. And that's why it works. I mean, it's all just music and great direction from Steven Spielberg. And look, the characters are iconic, from, of course, Chief Brody and Hop. Oh my god. I say iconic and I can't even remember the guy's name. You've got Chief Brody, you've got Quinn and Hoop. I was going to say something inappropriate, not Hooper. I know. I was like, it's not Hooker. It can't be Hooper. But yeah, from Brody and Quentin Hooper, I mean, all of their introductions are absolutely phenomenal. You understand these people straight away. Quentin especially is so iconic with the chalkboard, scratches down, gets the attention, and he once again has the most iconic monologues in film history, where he's telling that really creepy story about how all these men in the military got picked off one by one when their ship got destroyed by a bomb.
Yeah.
And it's even just things like that, just a man, it's just pure performance, a man telling a story, and it just makes your skin crawl. You have that chill, that effect. And there's a family dynamic to it. It's about a man trying to help his town as well as his son and his wife. He wants to protect them all, and he's a man who's afraid of the water. It's a perfect setup. It's literally it's a film that always makes me feel clenched up and suspenseful and on the edge of my seat. But it's not anything. It's nothing. It's nothing extreme. I feel like this is why anyone can watch Jaws and they're hooked on the characters, they're hooked on the story, they're hooked on the setting, and it's one of Steven Spielberg's best films still to this day, almost 50 years on from when it came out. And yeah, it's also a great commentary on how greed kills. How basically wanting to more safety, simple instructions and simple, this isn't going to go well, just because someone sees dollar signs being the mayor character, how that ends up in casualties and people dying. And it's timeless. It is timeless.
And it talks about how close a shark's family is, because that shark's children went on and got revenge multiple times.
I would even recommend watching those sequels to Jaws because they're hilarious and they won't scare your kids.
The Michael Caine one is the best one.
The revenge, fantastic. But that's why it has to be Jaws. It is, to me, if you are someone who's scared of anything, or you got kids and you kind of want to level them up, as like I say, and to get into the horror genre, stick on Jaws. It's got to be Jaws.
Beautiful.
I thought I would like, oh, that's a good, it's got to be Jaws, that'd be a great way to end it, and then you jump right in, but no, but no, it's you.
Anyway, right, cool. So sorry, bro. Got emotional there. So yeah, it is one film, but I've just realised in my head there's also kind of another film I kind of want to quickly mention, which is, they came out a few years apart. Fucking hell, they actually did come out a few years apart. I didn't realise. But Coraline. Right, which is what we're going to talk about. And I want to talk about, then we're going to quickly talk about the director, Henry Selick, right? Who, have you ever played Little Nightmares?
No, I've really been meaning to for a long time.
He directed that as well.
He directed the game Little Nightmares.
Oh, he directed the game.
That actually makes sense.
which is kind of mad. I know his most recent film wasn't well received by Gonfalo, Wendell and Wild,
Wendell and Wild, yes, yes, yes.
but he also directed Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I always love.
Ah, him, yes, yes.
Which is quite a shame because it's called Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, so
Yeah, Tim
everybody
Burton
just
still to
assumes.
this day gets so much credit for that film, and it's just he produced it. I'm sure he's involved with the production, but he was not the director of that film. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, Coraline, which if you don't know, is about a girl who moves to a new house with her family, and she
Mhm.
kind of discovers a hole in the wall that takes her to this kind of parallel world where everything's perfect, except the thing is that all her parents and friends have
Mhm.
buttons for eyes. Okay? And later on, she maybe discovers that this world isn't perfect. Um,
Ooh.
it's a stop motion film, right? Which I think adds to this kind of horror
Yeah.
aspect because you can get really creepy sets with it. You can get kind of spooky kind of characters with the kind of facial expressions. I still think to this day that the buttons are really terrifying because they're
Mhm.
so subtle. They're just
Yeah.
so subtle. But
It's one
you look at them,
feature. It's literally one
uh-huh,
feature is changed, and now it's creepy.
and you're like, that's kind of terrifying. But also, it is like still rated a PG. It's an hour
Mhm.
and 40 minutes.
Yep.
Creeps a lot of kids out. I remember being really creeped out when I
Mhm.
saw it,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I'm kind of thinking, why was that? Is that one that you really like? A lot of kids were really like desperate to see,
Mhm.
like, because it was a, it's not a. I don't think it was DreamWorks, or it's like it was kind of a more of an independent. It wasn't
Yeah.
like Disney or it wasn't the big ones.
No, it wasn't a big one.
And I really think it's really great. I do. I love the kind of the music we used into it. Is kind of adds to the
Mhm.
kind of creepiness of it. When
Mhm.
she goes through the tunnel, there's always kind of some music playing because she's kind of going into this idyllic paradise world in her eyes, and it's like, oh, wait, be careful
Everything's
what you wish
off.
for
Yeah,
because something's
exactly.
a bit
Uh huh.
off. And I mean, it's a classic one, and I mean, you definitely get stronger horrors on that kind of point
Mhm.
nowadays
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
you can get kind of I see some sort of kind of like the idea of kind of multiple families kind of reminds me of Us a wee bit with the
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
underground ones, but you get like a lot of stronger like hardcore horror films on that these
Mhm.
kind of themes. But I think Coraline's amazing because I also think the animation is just fantastic.
I mean, it's
And
timeless, really.
one of the things about stop motion is that it's timeless.
Exactly.
Like maybe the camera quality improves slightly, but apart from that, you can put on any stop motion film and just enjoy it. So yeah, Caroline definitely one of the ones
Well, now
go and
that we're
watch.
actually on specifically kids' films, before we wrap up, I want to talk about some more kids' films because that's kind of what for me. Like, well, think about it like this, Kyle. Right? There's really this in the modern day. I feel like a lot of kids' films or even family films and animated films really do shy away from horror elements, and that absolutely wasn't the case back in the day. I mean, even
Oh
when we go back to something like you and I talked about this before, we go back to 2007. We got something like Monster House.
yeah,
Monster
yeah,
House
literally about to say that.
is a really effective and creepy film. I remember seeing that in the cinema when I was like 8 years old, and that really creeped me out. Just that the whole idea of this house being alive and like you don't know what's going on. Like, why is there's this scary old man shouting at these kids, and then it's got a great twist to it. I actually don't want to spoil it in case you haven't seen Monster House.
No,
Look, the CGI animation might have been a bit dated now, but it's a great film. I love those characters, and when you get into the backstory of what's really going on, it's dark. It's dark, and I
it is
feel like
quite
a lot
dark.
of kids' films and animated films have lost that sort of edge. I mean, even
Horror's
something if you go
great.
to like Disney's classic films, if you go to something like Snow White or Dumbo or even Alice the '60s Alice in Wonderland has a lot of really creepy elements to it, and I don't know why that is, Kayla. Why do you think it is like we've kind of become studios have been shied
I
away from having these creepier elements that can kind of spook kids.
Well, right. Here's the thing. 'Cause
Mhm,
I think like executives are too worried these days that kids are
mhm.
becoming too fragile with the kind
Right.
of scary
Hmm.
aspects, and they're like, maybe we'll shy away from it because maybe that's why
Hmm.
they decide to release horror films or Halloween films in July of all months. Fucking idiots. But like I don't know. It is something. You are right, because like I said, we had an era where we had Caroline, we had The Corpse Bride. Films that were a wee bit kind of creepier. Paranormal.
Paranorman was like 2010. Yeah.
Was that kind of 2010?
2010. Yeah.
We had the one that was kind of like Frankenweenie was a wee bit later, wasn't it?
No, that was around the time Paranorman as well. I think 2011.
Was that? Yeah, 2011. So we had like those eras where they had a bit of a darker kind of feel to them, but not really horror. But yeah, like Monster House, it's one of a kind. Like we don't get. And I remember genuinely watching it because I used to love rewatching it because I was like, this is creepy. And it's like, it was when you were young and you had that, the kind of adrenaline you got from watching a horror film that you get now. That was like the first time I realised, oh, this is actually kind of, like, this is something that's actually making me intrigued. I want to see what happens here. I really feel they should push for more kid-centric horror, Let's get a young Michael Myers story and make it
young Michael Myers. But I think, Studio Ghibli never really shied away from it, really, and like Spirited Away has some great horror elements to it as well.
Right, that is something I was actually debating. I was looking lists earlier in the week, and I was like, Spirited Away? I was like, is that? I mean, I know there's some creepy elements.
I remember actually being quite I remember watching, like, our gran used to, like, when we stayed over there, used to, like, go to the library and rent us DVDs when we stayed over there, and she got Spirited Away one time, and I remember being really disturbed by it when I was like 5 years old. Like, see when the parents turned to pigs. I don't know. I just like, oh my god, what if my parents turned into pigs?
Bitch, to be honest. I think personally, being honest, it's weird. I don't know if I was just I don't know if I just didn't find that creepy, because when I saw like Spirited Away,
I did, yeah.
Because I'm like, it's got weird. I always find like the designs are weird and everything. I think the only scene I actually found creepy in that is when they're washing that giant spirit, and then they unplug it, and then it's like the howling spirit comes out of it. I think that's the only time I went, whoa, as a kid. The kids being fat. When I was like 7 watching that, or 6, I went, that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor. Catholic. That's what that is right there. Said that's my parents, and they were shocked, and they were like, "This is incredible." I was sitting there with notes and glasses on, going, "Yeah, well, I'll tell you what that is." But I can understand. I can understand.
Like, can you remember, like, recently, like, any animated film you have had like wide, like a wide release of Disney, a Pixar, a DreamWorks, anything that's kind of had a horror, creepy element scene to it? I can.
Like a Disney.
He's racking his brain.
I'm genuinely thinking like a Disney or. I genuinely nothing. I can't think of like. No, I mean, Disney have released that new Haunted Mansion film, which was aimed at kids. I don't know if it actually is mildly. It's on Disney Plus. If I get bored during Halloween,
yeah, they released it on Disney Plus for October, but they didn't release the actual film in cinemas in October.
Idiots!
Anyway, Kyle, let's before Kyle has a heart attack, let's wrap this up. So, thank you very much, Kyle, for joining me.
Yeah, sorry, you're welcome.
Oh, sorry, I mean, I'm just gonna say.
You know what? I'm gonna release a Christmas film in March. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah. So look, what was it? On next week's episode, and we are going to do this next week, because Killers of the Flower Moon is releasing in a couple weeks' time. We are going to be talking about Martin Scorsese and some of our favourites from his filmography, from his iconic 50+ 60-year career now. So we're going to talk about Martin Scorsese.
You think
next
he's going to
do
more?
He says he's got one more left in him. So.
Alright, he's Tarantino it then.
No, I know. He's Killers of the Flower Moon might not be his last film after all. But yeah, so look, we just give our opinion on all those entry-level horror films, those creepy animated films, plus Ahsoka and their creator. But at the end of the day, those were our unwanted opinions. Thank you very much.